Ella didn't have a train to catch that morning. She didn't pack a suitcase or print a ticket. She simply woke up, made a cup of coffee, slipped a book into her bag, and walked to the central train station with no destination in mind. She wasn't traveling today. She was watching. The station was alive even before dawn. Long before most shops opened, long before the sun touched the rooftops, people moved in every direction. Some with purpose, some with exhaustion, some with joy, others barely awake. Ella found a bench on the upper level, where she could see the Great Hall and the main departures board. She sat down, opened her notebook, and began her day with a single sentence. Today, I am not going anywhere. The soundscape was a kind of music, rolling suitcases, distant announcements, footsteps echoing against tile, laughter, heels clicking, coffee cups clinking. A group of teenagers rushed past her with oversized backpacks and messy hair, one of them trying to balance a paper cup of tea while gesturing wildly about something. They were likely headed to their first festival, or maybe a school trip. At 7:13 a.m., a man in a navy suit sat down 2 benches away. He checked his watch twice, pulled out a document folder, and rubbed his temples. A moment later, he closed his eyes and leaned back. Ella watched his expression soften slightly. For a few seconds, he wasn't rushing. He was simply there. A little girl in a yellow coat danced in front of her mother near the ticket machines. Her pigtails bounced with every step, and she kept pointing at the trains with wide-eyed wonder. Ella couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw the joy clearly. The mother, tired but smiling, crouched to tie the girl's shoe as the child traced her finger over the map display. Ella got up and wandered toward the platform stairs, passing a man with a cello case slung over his shoulder. He looked lost in thought, lips moving silently, perhaps rehearsing for a concert. At the bakery kiosk, a woman bought a croissant and offered a second one to the homeless man sitting on the ground beside the flower stand. He took it with both hands and nodded, his eyes briefly bright. At one of the smaller platforms, a group of railway workers gathered with thermoses and toolkits. They talked quietly, leaning against a stack of wooden pallets, their faces lined by the early shift in years of routine. One of them noticed Ella and gave a small nod. She returned it with a smile. Around 9 a.m., Ella bought a cappuccino and found a new bench by the main arrival board. She sipped slowly, watching the letters on the screen flip: Berlin, Amsterdam, Vienna, Prague. The world shifting in neat alphabetical clicks. Each name sparked a memory. Fog in Berlin, tulips in Amsterdam, a cafe in Vienna, a concert in Prague. She pulled out her book but didn't read it. Instead, she watched an elderly couple holding hands as they climbed onto a train to Zurich. A young man ran to the platform just as the doors closed, panting, laughing alone. A woman in a red dress stood still for a long time, staring down the track. Then she turned and walked away. At noon, Ella went to the food court and bought a bowl of lentil soup. She found a seat by the window where sunlight filtered through the high glass ceiling, warming her shoulders. She wrote, "In a place built for leaving, there is also so much staying. Not everyone boards. Some of us are just passing through another kind of journey." She took her time eating. Around her, businessmen typed away on laptops, parents unwrapped peanut butter sandwiches for their toddlers, 2 backpackers shared a travel guide, heads bent together like conspirators. In the early afternoon, she returned to the same bench and let her gaze follow a pigeon hopping between crumbs. The station had quieted a bit, its pulse slower, but no less alive. A violinist set up near the main corridor, and the notes drifted upward in soft spirals. People dropped coins into his open case, barely breaking stride. She walked the length of the concourse, pausing at the photo booth where a boy and girl giggled behind the curtain. A moment later, they burst out, holding the strip of black and white pictures, laughing at their faces. It made her think of summer nights, of youth held still in tiny printed squares. She wandered into the bookstore inside the terminal, browsed titles, picked up a small poetry chapbook called Trains of Thought. She bought it with cash and returned to her spot, reading the first few lines as the sky turned orange beyond the windows. One poem read, Between here and there slash is the place we forget to live slash, but the tracks remember everything. Ella closed the book and let her eyes rest. By late afternoon, the light in the station shifted again, long shadows, golden glow. She sat near the arrival gate and watched reunions. A teenage girl hugged a friend so tightly they both began to cry. A small dog jumped and barked wildly at the sight of its owner. Two brothers, identical except for the color of their coats, gave each other a high five and walked off arm in arm. A grandmother waited quietly with a bouquet of daisies. When her grandson finally appeared, tall and bearded, she dropped the flowers and wrapped her arms around him with a kind of fierce joy. Ella blinked fast. Evening fell slowly. The station lights flickered on one by one. Ella ate a simple sandwich from her bag and shared the crust with a one-eyed cat who had appeared under the bench. He lingered for a while, then disappeared into the shadows. She had been there almost 12 hours. Not a moment wasted. She had watched the world in motion and felt the stillness of her own breath inside it. At 7:53 p.m., she wrote one final note. Today, I learned how many ways there are to travel without moving. I stayed still. And somehow, I saw everything. The world came to me on rails and wheels and tired feet. And I welcomed it in silence. She stood, stretched once more, and walked slowly out of the station, past the flickering departures board, through the high arched doors, and into the city night that waited quietly, just beyond the trains.